The autumn air at Crestwood University carried a crisp edge, swirling through the ivy-clad stone buildings and rustling the leaves that blanketed the quad. Aisha Carter, 18 years old and a freshman, walked with a purpose that masked the knot tightening in her stomach. Her backpack, slung over one shoulder, was heavy with textbooks, biology, calculus, literature. But it was nothing compared to the weight of the words she'd heard just hours ago in her Introduction to Literature class. Words that cut deeper than she'd ever imagined, words that lingered like a bruise she couldn't ignore. Aisha's journey to Crestwood was a story of grit and dreams. Born and raised in a cramped apartment on Chicago's South Side, she'd grown up in a neighborhood where hope was hard-won. Her mother, Camille Johnson, was a beacon of strength, a senior official in the U.S. Department of Education, a woman who'd clawed her way through systemic barriers to fight for equity in schools nationwide. Camille had raised Aisha to be fiercely independent, to carve her own path without relying on her mother's influence. Aisha had done just that. Her near-perfect SAT scores, a 4.0 GPA, and a college essay that wove her struggles with her aspirations had earned her a full scholarship to Crestwood, an Ivy League institution where brilliance was supposed to thrive. That essay, raw and poetic, had poured from her soul, a testament to her love for stories and her belief that words could change the world. But at Crestwood, Aisha was learning that words could also wound. Her first week on campus was a whirlwind of orientation, new faces, and the thrill of belonging. She marveled at the lecture halls with their polished wood and stained glass windows, the libraries stacked with books she'd only dreamed of reading. She made friends, like Maya Alvarez, a junior from Los Angeles with a quick laugh and a fierce loyalty, who'd grown up in a Latino neighborhood and understood the weight of being different. Aisha's other classes, biology, calculus, history, were challenging but exhilarating, with professors who praised her insights and encouraged her questions. But Introduction to Literature, taught by the formidable Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, was different. It was a battleground she hadn't expected. Thompson was a Crestwood legend. Her silver hair was always neatly pinned, her tailored blazers a symbol of authority. Her lectures were sharp, her standards unrelenting. Students whispered about her in awe and fear. She'd published books on Shakespeare, mentored Pulitzer winners, and shaped Crestwood's literature department for decades. Aisha, who'd always loved stories, was eager to impress her. She'd read Their Eyes Were Watching God in high school and fallen in love with Zora Neale Hurston's voice, its rhythm and truth. She imagined discussing Hurston with Thompson, dissecting themes of identity and resilience. But from the first day, something felt off. The classroom was a grand space, with tall windows letting in slants of golden light. Students settled into their seats, the air buzzing with nervous energy. Thompson stood at the front, her presence commanding silence. "Class," she began, her voice crisp as autumn leaves, "this course demands excellence. No excuses. Literature is not just stories, it's the soul of humanity, and you will treat it as such." She paced, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Let's start with introductions. Tell me your name and why you're here." One by one, students spoke. A boy named Ethan talked about his love for Hemingway, his voice confident. A girl named Sophie cited Austen, her words polished. When Aisha's turn came, she sat up straight, her heart fluttering, but her voice steady. "I'm Aisha Carter," she said. "I'm here because I love literature. Stories like Their Eyes Were Watching God taught me how words can shape identity, how they can give voice to people who've been silenced." Thompson nodded, but her lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. "Aisha Carter," she repeated, her eyes lingering. "And how did you secure your scholarship? Was it one of those diversity programs?" The room went quiet. A few students chuckled, their laughter sharp in Aisha's ears. Her face burned, a flush creeping up her neck. She wasn't sure what stung more, the question itself or the way it was asked, casual but weighted, as if her presence needed justifying. "No, ma'am," she said, keeping her voice even. "I earned it through my grades and my essay." "Impressive," Thompson replied, her tone laced with something Aisha couldn't quite name, skepticism perhaps, or amusement. Well, let's see if you can keep up. The bell rang, and students shuffled out, their chatter filling the hall. Aisha lingered, gathering her books slowly, replaying the moment. The question about her scholarship wasn't just curiosity. It felt like a challenge, a suggestion that she didn't belong. She told herself she was overthinking it. Teachers back home had doubted her too, called her lucky when she aced tests, assumed she'd drop out before graduation. She'd silenced them all with her acceptance letter to Crestwood. She'd proved Thompson wrong too. But proving herself wasn't as simple as she'd hoped. Weeks passed, and Thompson's comments kept coming, small and sharp like paper cuts that never healed. One day, after Aisha turned in a paper on The Great Gatsby, Thompson handed it back with a raised eyebrow. "This is surprisingly well written, Aisha," she said, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "Did you have help?" Aisha's stomach twisted. "No, ma'am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wrote it myself." Thompson shrugged as if unconvinced and moved on. The snickers from her classmates followed Aisha out the door. Another time, during a discussion on Emily Dickinson's poetry, Thompson called on her unexpectedly. "Aisha, you're articulate for someone with your background," she said, her smile tight. "Scholarship students often struggle here." The word background landed like a stone. Aisha felt every eye in the room, some curious, some mocking. She wanted to ask what Thompson meant by background, her neighborhood, her race, her single-parent home, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded, her hands trembling under the desk, and sank into her seat. That night in her dorm, she stared at her reflection in the mirror, whispering, "You belong here. You earned this." But the words felt hollow, drowned out by Thompson's voice echoing in her mind. The comments piled up, each one chipping away at her confidence. Aisha noticed her classmates' distance. Some avoided her in group projects. Others whispered that her scholarship was a handout, or that she'd been admitted to fill a quota. She stopped raising her hand in class, even when she knew the answers. Her essays, once bold and creative, became safe, calculated to avoid scrutiny. She spent hours rewriting sentences, second-guessing every word, terrified of giving Thompson another reason to question her. At night, she lay awake, the glow of her laptop illuminating her dorm room as she scrolled through Crestwood's website, rereading the diversity statement that promised an inclusive environment. It felt like a lie. One evening, as the campus quad glowed with the golden hues of sunset, Maya knocked on Aisha's door, her usual grin replaced with concern. "You've been ghosting me, girl," she said, plopping onto Aisha's bed, her hoop earrings glinting. "You okay? You look like you haven't slept in weeks." Aisha hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her notebook. She'd kept Thompson's comments to herself, afraid of sounding weak or paranoid. But Maya's warmth, her unwavering presence, broke through. "It's my lit class," Aisha admitted, her voice low. "My professor, she keeps saying things about my scholarship, my work, my background. Like I don't belong here because I'm black." Maya's eyes narrowed, her posture stiffening. "What kind of things?" Aisha recounted the moments. The question about her scholarship on the first day, the comment about her surprisingly good paper, the jab about her articulate speech. Each memory felt heavier as she spoke, the weight of months spilling out. "It's not just what she says," Aisha added. "It's how she says it. Like she's waiting for me to fail. And now other students are acting weird too. I heard someone say I'm only here because of affirmative action." Maya's jaw clenched. "That's not just rude, Aisha. That's a microaggression. She's targeting you because of your race, and it's messed up." "Microaggression?" Aisha frowned. The term was new to her, though it felt like a piece of a puzzle she'd been trying to solve. "It's those little slights, the ones that seem small but hurt deep," Maya explained, leaning forward. "Like assuming you're here because of a diversity quota, not your brain. Or acting surprised when you do well, like black people can't be smart. I've dealt with it too. Professors assuming I'm street because I'm Latina. You need to call her out." Aisha shook her head, her stomach churning at the thought. "Call out a professor? Maya, she's untouchable. She's been here forever, and the dean loves her. What if I'm overreacting? What if I am struggling? Maya grabbed Aisha's shoulders, her eyes fierce. You're not. Your essay got you that scholarship. Your brain got you here. You aced every test in high school and you're killing it in your other classes. Don't let her make you doubt that. You're Aisha freaking Carter. The words lit a spark, small but stubborn. That night after Maya left, Aisha opened her laptop and searched for microaggressions. She found articles, videos, stories of students like her, Black, Latino, Asian, who'd faced similar slights. One blog post described a professor questioning a Black student's admission, assuming it was diversity-driven. Another shared a Latina student's experience of being told she was too emotional for academia. The parallels hit hard, each story a mirror to Aisha's pain. She started a journal, a spiral notebook she kept hidden under her pillow, jotting down every comment Thompson made, every date, every context. 9:15, asked if my scholarship was a diversity program. 9:22, said my paper was surprisingly good. 10:30, called me articulate for my background. It was her armor, her proof that she wasn't imagining things. But the weight of those words grew heavier, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could carry it. The semester's midpoint brought a major presentation, a chance to shine. Aisha chose Their Eyes Were Watching God, a novel that had spoken to her soul in high school. She spent weeks crafting her analysis, weaving in themes of race, identity, and resilience. She read Hurston's words until they felt like her own, underlining passages that mirrored her own journey. Janie's story is about claiming her voice, Aisha wrote in her notes, even when the world tries to silence her. The irony wasn't lost on her. The night before the presentation, Aisha practiced in front of her dorm room mirror, her voice steady, her slides polished. She wore her favorite sweater, a soft blue one her mother had given her, as a talisman of strength. "You've got this," she told her reflection, though her hands trembled. This was her moment to show Thompson and herself what she was capable of. The lecture hall was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Students fidgeted, their laptops glowing, as Thompson sat at the front, her pen poised over a notepad. Aisha's name was called, and she walked to the podium, her heart pounding but her chin high. She clicked on her first slide, a quote from Hurston, "If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." Janie's journey reflects the struggle for self-definition in a world that tries to define her by her race and gender. Aisha began, her voice clear. Hurston shows us that true freedom comes from within, from claiming your own story, even when others try to write it for you. She clicked through her slides, her words flowing with passion. She analyzed Hurston's use of dialect, the symbolism of the pear tree, and the intersections of race and gender in Janie's life. She tied it to her own experience as a Black woman, navigating a world that often misunderstood her. Her voice growing stronger with each sentence. "Janie's silence is her cage," Aisha said, "but her voice is her liberation. Hurston teaches us that we must speak, even when it's hard, because our stories matter." When she finished, the room erupted in applause, genuine and loud. Ethan, the Hemingway fan, nodded in awe. Sophie, the Austen devotee, clapped with a smile. Even the students who'd whispered about her scholarship seemed impressed. For the first time in weeks, Aisha felt unstoppable, her chest swelling with pride. She'd done it, she'd shown them all. But as the class ended, Thompson approached, her expression unreadable. Students lingered, packing their bags, their voices a low hum. "Aisha," Thompson said, loud enough for them to hear, "that was exceptional, almost too polished. Did someone help you with this? I mean, considering your scholarship's circumstances." The word circumstances hung in the air like a slap. Aisha's face burned, the applause fading into a distant hum. Every eye in the room was on her, some smirking, some pitying, some just curious. She saw the judgment, the assumption that her work, her presence was somehow fraudulent. The weight of months, the questions, the comments, the whispers, crashed over her like a wave. Something inside her snapped. "Mrs. Thompson," Aisha said, her voice trembling but rising, "I wrote every word of that presentation. I earned my scholarship with a 4.0 GPA and an essay I poured my soul into. I'm tired of you implying I don't belong here because I'm black. Stop it. Now. The room froze. A few students gasped, their hands pausing mid-motion. Ethan's jaw dropped. Sophie's eyes widened. Two girls in the back clapped hesitantly, their applause echoing in the silence. Thompson's face reddened, her eyes narrowing to slits. "How dare you speak to me that way?" she snapped, her voice sharp as a whip. "Leave my classroom immediately. I'll report this to the dean." Aisha grabbed her bag, her hands shaking, her vision blurring with tears. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her, the sound reverberating through the hall. Her heart raced as she fled across the quad, the autumn leaves crunching under her sneakers. She'd stood up for herself, but at what cost? Her legs carried her to her dorm, where she collapsed onto her bed, the tears finally spilling over. She'd spoken her truth, but the fear of consequences, suspension, expulsion, the loss of her scholarship clawed at her chest. By the next morning, an email from the dean's office arrived, its subject lines stark: disciplinary action. Aisha was suspended pending a hearing for disrespecting a faculty member. The words blurred on her screen, each one a confirmation of her worst fears. She'd fought back, and now she was paying the price. Her scholarship, her dream of becoming a lawyer, her future at Crestwood, all of it hung in the balance. She felt like Janie, silenced by a world that refused to hear her. Alone in her dorm, rain pattering against the window, Aisha dialed the one number she'd avoided for months. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "I need you." Camille Johnson's voice was calm but laced with steel, the kind of calm that preceded a storm. "Aisha, slow down. Tell me everything." As Aisha recounted the story, Thompson's comments, the presentation, the confrontation, the suspension, Camille's silence grew heavier. Aisha could almost feel her mother's resolve through the phone, a force as unyielding as the woman herself. Camille had faced her own battles with racism, from being the only black woman in government boardrooms to fighting for policies that gave kids like Aisha a chance. She'd been called aggressive for speaking her mind, lucky for her promotions, diversity hire behind closed doors. This wasn't just about her daughter, it was about every student who'd been diminished by a system that claimed to be fair. "I'm coming to Crestwood tomorrow," Camille said, her voice resolute. "We're going to fix this. You did the right thing, Aisha. I'm proud of you." Aisha hung up, her tears drying as a flicker of hope stirred. She'd been afraid to lean on her mother, afraid of seeming weak or dependent. But Camille's words reminded her that strength wasn't about standing alone, it was about knowing when to ask for help. She pulled her journal from under her pillow, its pages filled with Thompson's words, and read through them, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every student who'd felt the sting of those slights, every voice that had been silenced. The next day, Camille arrived at Crestwood like a force of nature. She stepped out of a sleek black car, her tailored blazer and pearl earrings a stark contrast to the casual bustle of the campus. Her presence turned heads. Students whispered, professors paused, and the admin building's receptionist fumbled her pen as Camille approached. Aisha met her at the entrance, her heart swelling at the sight of her mother's determined stride. "You ready?" Camille asked, her eyes softening for a moment. Aisha nodded, clutching her journal. "Ready." The conference room was stark, its long table flanked by leather chairs. Dr. Richard Hargrove, the dean, sat at the head, his glasses perched on his nose, his expression uneasy. Mrs. Thompson sat beside him, her posture rigid, her lips pursed. Aisha and Camille took their seats across from them, the journal placed deliberately on the table. The air was thick with tension, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound. Camille spoke first, her voice calm but unyielding. "Dr. Hargrove, my daughter has been subjected to repeated microaggressions by Mrs. Thompson. These are not isolated incidents, they're a pattern of discriminatory behavior. I have Aisha's detailed notes, and I've spoken to other students who faced similar treatment. This ends today." Thompson bristled, her voice defensive. "I never meant to offend. I was simply curious about her scholarship." Aisha overreacted, and her outburst was unacceptable. "She disrespected me in front of the entire class." Aisha's hands clenched under the table, her nails digging into her palms. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a subtle nod. Taking a deep breath, Aisha spoke, her voice quiet but firm. You didn't ask anyone else about their scholarships. Only me. Every time you commented on my work, my speech, my background, you made me feel like I didn't deserve to be here, like I was less than everyone else because I'm black. Hargrove shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tapping the table. Miss Johnson, we value diversity at Crestwood. Perhaps this was a misunderstanding. Mrs. Thompson is one of our finest faculty members with decades of service. Camille cut him off, her tone sharp as a blade. Finest? A teacher who undermines her students based on race is not fine. I've reviewed Crestwood's policies, Dr. Hargrove, and they explicitly prohibit discrimination. I've also reviewed federal guidelines, given my role at the Department of Education. I'm prepared to escalate this to my colleagues in Washington if necessary, but I'd rather we resolve it here. The room shifted, the weight of Camille's authority settling over it like a storm cloud. Hargrove's face paled, his eyes darting to the journal. May I see the documentation? He asked, his voice tight. Aisha slid the journal forward, its pages marked with dates and quotes. Hargrove read in silence, his brow furrowing deeper with each entry. Camille leaned forward, her voice steady. This isn't just about Aisha. I've received complaints from other students, submitted anonymously through a peer of Aisha's, Maya Alvarez. Mrs. Thompson has a history of targeting minority students. You've ignored it for too long. Thompson's face reddened, her hands gripping the table. That's absurd. I treat all my students equally. Aisha's accusations are exaggerated, and those other complaints are baseless. Aisha's heart pounded, but she held Thompson's gaze. They're not baseless. I've talked to students who've taken your class before. They told me you've said things like, diversity students need to work harder, or certain backgrounds aren't suited for literature. You've been doing this for years. Hargrove's eyes widened, his discomfort palpable. He turned to Thompson, his voice low. Eleanor, is there any truth to this? Thompson stammered, her composure cracking. I may have made comments in passing, but they were never meant to harm. I was trying to push my students to excel. Camille's eyes narrowed. Push them to excel? You pushed my daughter to doubt herself. You pushed her to feel like an imposter in a place she earned her right to be. That's not teaching. That's harm. The room fell silent, the air heavy with the weight of truth. Hargrove cleared his throat, his hands folding tightly. Miss Johnson, Aisha, I assure you we take this seriously. Mrs. Thompson, you'll be suspended pending a full investigation. Aisha's suspension is lifted, effective immediately. We'll review our policies and ensure this doesn't happen again. Thompson's face fell, her shoulders slumping. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Camille turned to Aisha, her eyes softening. You're stronger than you know, she whispered, her hands squeezing Aisha's. Aisha nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time in months, she felt the weight lifting, the knot in her stomach loosening. She'd spoken her truth, and her mother had amplified it, a force that could move mountains. In the weeks that followed, Crestwood changed. The investigation confirmed Thompson's pattern of behavior, drawing on testimonies from current and former students. She was required to attend intensive diversity training, and her classes were monitored by a faculty oversight committee. The university launched a task force on inclusion, with Aisha invited to serve as a student representative. She accepted, her voice steadier now, her purpose clear. Aisha's blog, The Weight of Words, became a campus sensation, a space where she shared her story and invited others to do the same. Students of color, from freshmen to seniors, submitted essays about their experiences, microaggressions, stereotypes, the pressure to prove themselves. The blog sparked workshops, town halls, and a new student-led diversity council. Aisha, once hesitant to speak in class, now led discussions, her presence commanding respect. Her essays regained their fire, her words bold and unapologetic. Her classmates, once distant, began to see her for who she was, a brilliant, resilient woman who'd earned her place. One evening, as Aisha walked across the quad, The ivy glowing under the moonlight, she felt lighter. The autumn air was cool, the stars sharp against the night sky. She thought of her mother, of Maya, of every student who'd stood with her. She thought of Janie, Hurston's heroine, who'd found her voice against all odds. Aisha's journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more doubts, more battles, but she knew now that her voice was her power, and no one could take it away. She paused by the library, its windows aglow with the promise of stories waiting to be told. She smiled, her heart full. "I belong here," she whispered, and this time the words felt true.